Welcome to the December 21st regular business board meeting of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. This meeting is being made publicly accessible via Zoom and also live streamed. There will be an opportunity for public comment regarding any topic during this meeting and can be given via the chat feature and will be read by the district solicitor. This meeting is video recorded with sound for purpose of public broadcast, and all participants will be muted upon entry. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Copeland.
Thank you, Ms. Klein, and welcome everyone. We'd like to begin this evening with a brief update on where we are with COVID testing. Some time ago, we'd sent out a communication to the community indicating that Lower Merion School District, along with another school district in Montgomery County, had volunteered to be the first two school districts to start what we will hope is a robust testing program that's supported by the Children's Hospital and the Montgomery County Board of Health. Those folks who have been following this situation since March know that back in August, when we were planning our return to school and our hybrid, I'd been asked a number of times what would be the metrics that we'd use if we were all going to come back. And that time I'd indicated, well, if we can get some vaccines and we can get some rapid testing, I think we have a shot at really making a successful program. When I, in one of the weekly superintendent's meetings, had the opportunity, they asked for volunteers, I agreed to have our district be one of the volunteers. I did that for two reasons. One, I believe that our infrastructure is strong, that we've got a history of our health professionals providing immunizations, and so we know a lot about what it takes to make this work. And secondly, I believe that by having as robust as we can a system where we can begin to make tests and we can find people who are asymptomatic, who might be still carrying the virus, if we can get them into quarantine or get them treated and get them the help they need, then we will be able to stop the spread of the virus within the district and be able to maintain face-to-face instruction. Now, I've indicated that we are moving ahead with this. We are doing this so that we can really learn how this production process works. They'll be observing us because we'll probably make some changes. What I'm going to be asking our staff to present to the board and the public tonight is not a final product. It is an overview. It is broad strokes, but it is well thought out. But we may change. You're going to see a timeline. You're going to see some specific examples that may lengthen, that may constrict. I just want to manage expectations. Initially, we only have enough test kits so that we can work with our staff and any students who, due to the distance, they really can't have social distancing. It's mostly special education students, but maybe other students who also fall into that situation, and therefore there's a higher risk. And I'll talk more about that as the process goes. So without further ado, let Megan Schaefer, who's assistant to the superintendent for administration, and Terry Quinlan, who's our health supervisor, take you through this 5-slide presentation. Megan.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here and provide, as promised, a brief overview of what we think are really exciting developments within the district and our availability to, or the opportunity for us to provide rapid testing for staff and students within the district. So as Mr. Copeland mentioned, this is part of a joint safety effort led by Montgomery County Office of Public Health with the support of the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And they've been great partners working through this. We have been collaborating on materials, on information, distribution. We'll talk a little bit about all of the many tasks that are involved in pulling this together in a very short time period. We aim to be able to begin by early January to begin regular testing of asymptomatic staff and identified students, again, in order to reduce the risk of disease spread among our community members. So the idea is that we catch people, that may not be exhibiting symptoms and be able to remove them from the work or school environment so that we can, again, reduce the risk of spread. The program primarily uses what's called Binax Now tests, which provide results within 15 minutes and are administered using a nasal swab. And I'll turn it to Ms. Quinlan to answer any questions you might have about the details involved with that. But the benefit truly is that we can train our own staff to observe and administer the test at each of our school locations. So we're really going to be able to provide an important service right within our school buildings using our staff to do that. And again, as Mr. Copeland mentioned, we're initially planning to conduct two types of testing. One is what's called weekly assurance testing, and that means that we'll be identifying staff who are committing to ongoing testing within this program for a period of time, ideally until a vaccine becomes available to them. We hope that supplies allow us to do this testing for that extended period of time. So our goal is to be able to offer that to all staff that work on site for this period of time on a weekly basis. We also want to prioritize programs and students where social distancing cannot be maintained to the extent recommended, and then perhaps target buildings where there may be higher case incidents. We'll again look into that and refine our parameters as we move forward. The other opportunity that this program presents to us is to do symptomatic testing during the school day, meaning that we want to strike a balance. We don't want to invite people that are experiencing symptoms into the workplace or into school, but those individuals that report to work, for example, that begin to experience symptoms after the school day begins, we would have the ability to offer testing to them on site as we would with that weekly assurance testing.
Yeah, but let me really emphasize, the idea is not to say, geez, I don't feel well, let me go to school and get tested. Exactly. The idea is to stay home if you don't feel well, but if during the day that happens, we'll build in that possibility.
And here seemed to be a good time just to insert the note that if, to the extent that we will be testing students, we will be doing outreach, we'll be asking for authorization, of course, to conduct that testing. So any parents, guardians out there watching know that we have that in mind and will be providing much more detailed information about this program as we move forward. Again, our objectives and timeline is pretty ambitious. We hope to begin some small-scale testing next week. Ms. Quinlan and her team have been prepared, I think, in their minds for weeks now, but we think we're going to be in a position to offer the testing as soon as next week, given that we have the testing available to us. We need to train staff members through this week in order to begin that work next week. In addition to learning how to administer the test, we also need to learn how to use the system that we'll need to enter the data about the testing into. This is a new platform, relatively new platform, that connects the information about the test results as required by law, reports it to the authorities that need to know, for example, the Office of Public Health and the Pennsylvania Department of Health. And so that's almost an instantaneous reporting mechanism. Again, that's another step in this process that we need to make sure that we're in the best position to provide that information and be able to use the app as it was intended. So again, this timeline is contingent upon the completion of these tasks that I've described and some that I've not gone quite into the weeds on this evening. So ranging from the beginning with the small scale testing, we hope to by the January 4th to be able to offer the testing to all staff working on site, and then through the weeks in January begin to incorporate additional populations, mainly of students, to those testing protocols. Again, knowing that we need to make sure that families have the information they need in order to participate, we know that we want to use the time on that first week and the experience we have with staff on that first week to kind of inform how we move forward with our student testing protocols.
And again, this is our thinking at this particular point. We may pivot and say, okay, maybe that first week we'll go for the staff who are interacting with students who they're close with first. But this is our broad strokes at this point. I just want to sort of manage expectations. This is a process that we're working with our partners from CHOP and Montgomery County, and we may have to make an alteration to this. I say that only because I've learned from the past that sometimes people come back and repeat exactly what I say, and things have changed, and they've had to change. So I'm just sort of let that happen now. Thanks, Megan.
And then to sort of wrap up, we are continuing to refine the parameters of the testing program, and it is going to be somewhat dependent on the inventory that's available to us. So the scope of the testing that we can do will be limited by that to some extent. It's a large-scale effort. You know, there are multiple entities involved, and we need to make sure that we're you know, in the best position to do the test safely, do it as accurately as possible, and collect the data and information that's required of us. So there are still some pieces to this that we're working through this week and will be into next. As I said earlier, we will share additional information about this program to the community, and specifically to the families and staff as we move forward. The more of the details you'd want to know if you were taking the test or being asked to submit to a testing protocol. So we promise our families and staff that information. And again, we are grateful for the support we're getting with the Office of Public Health and CHOP, and feel very fortunate to be in this position to lead this effort locally.
With that, are there any questions from the board?
I'll start with a question about there was a comment during the presentation about teachers that were willing to commit to the program requirements, and I'm curious sort of what is expected of the staff to participate.
So right now, this is assurance testing or sentinel testing, where you're looking to test people on a regular basis. And so my understanding is it's not a one-off or every once in a while. You want to test the same people on a regular basis. Is that, Terry, what I'm understanding?
Yes, that's accurate. When you're looking at testing asymptomatic people, you want to do it periodically or with some frequency over a longer period of time. And that way you can get a sense of how much virus there is in the community and whether there are any outbreaks. It's used differently with sentinel testing than it is with symptomatic individuals. So you want their continued participation.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. Ms. Kalish?
Thank you. I apologize if I missed this at some point in the presentation, but it was, is it a nasal swab or is it the oral swab? What was, could you tell me a little bit about specifically what test?
It's a nasal swab. Terry's an expert on nasal swabs.
It's a lower nasal swab, so
not all the way in your sinuses one.
No. But the downside to it is it does take 15 seconds in each nostril, so it's a little bit longer, a total of 30 seconds.
It's the same, basically the same test they've been doing at the county testing sites.
Yes.
Okay, and it would have a similar turnaround time on the results.
Actually, we would have results in 15 minutes.
Okay.
And positive tests, we can also confirm on site. We were fortunate to be provided with what's called a Q machine, which can confirm positive tests without having to go for additional testing.
Okay, so does the staff then have to, or whoever's being tested, do they just have to stand and wait until those 15 minutes are up because it's so fast, or are we going to allow people to go back?
I think that since most of the tests we hope will be negative, we know we'll
Okay.
get some positives, and because they're not outsiders, they're within the school community.
Hmm.
I don't think we want people necessarily standing there or waiting there. We know where to find them, so we can
Right.
catch up with them quickly.
And people
And
will be
my
able to,
understanding is you part of the process is you leave your cell number, and then you'll get a cell call that says, you know, you're negative, or you've tested positive. You have to come back for another test.
okay, so we
Uh,
are notifying everybody regardless of result.
Yes, and
Okay, great.
that's one of the benefits of doing it in district because we can combine that with the communication that we have with individuals already and give that guidance about what to do next, quarantine periods, isolation periods, and so forth.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Ms. Finger?
Thank you. This is excellent. I think it's going to be a real positive move, step in the right direction. I have two questions. One, and again, I apologize if I missed this. Will the tests be self-administered as guided by a nurse or other health professional, or will the nurse health professional be administering it for the students and the staff?
For staff, they will be self-administered with a nurse observing and making
Mhm.
sure it's being done properly and for the correct amount of time. For students, to the extent they can self-administer, it would be, but there will be some students who cannot self-administer. So of course we would do that for them, a
Uh,
nurse.
and then my next question is, would it make sense coming off of a break? Has there been talk of testing prior to people re-entering the buildings so that, since we are in that the protocol of depending on how many, the school may need to be shut down? Or is there a thought of maybe testing people, using a couple days to do some testing before we start up again?
So remember, we're going to use next week to sort of get our protocols set in place. And after that, we'll have some sense as to how many people we think we can test that first week back. Clearly, the fact that we're not in session that first week back gives us some flexibility that we wouldn't have if we were starting face to face right off the bat. But this is one of those, I got to manage expectations. We'll have to wait and see how that happens.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Gilbert?
Thanks. This is great. I really appreciate the foresight of volunteering. It may be a little bumpy, but I think it's great that we're doing this. And this is a little bit unrelated, but I'm just wondering if the administration has heard anything about sort of where school staff are in line for vaccinations, and is there a way that people could help boards, families in expressing to the people making those decisions that after obviously essential healthcare professionals and who's ever in that first group, I'm certainly not asking us to jump the line, but it's just as a way of ensuring school. Do we have any information?
I only know officially whatever I see on the news or I read in the paper. My understanding is
Yeah.
the CDC has placed school officials and bus drivers and anybody who works in a school high up on the list. It's also my understanding, and maybe Terry can, that the final decision about the protocols, however, are state by state.
Mhm.
So I would say to all of those folks who want schools to open up, to contact all of those legislators who made speeches about schools opening up and make sure that they have some influence on making sure that school personnel are vaccinated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mooring?
Thank you. Just one quick question. I know we noted that the that the teachers would be potentially volunteering. I was just wondering what the protocol, and again, if I missed it, I apologize. The criteria for the select number of students. I know that it's rolling out high school, middle, and then elementary. How are you determining, and what's that number?
I think we still have some consultation to do with Mrs. Quinlan and also Mrs. Frazier, because there's a high number of those students who are in special education classes. And so I think that we want to make sure that we cover that as much as we can. I think that the thinking is obviously that there's more transmission from what we understand at the older grades, but there's still a lot of close contact at the younger grades. So we want to take some time over the next 2 weeks to really flush that out.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think we're also looking at higher on the priority for students that don't have access, don't have great access to healthcare, or students who might not be connected that way, English language learners, other groups that have more need.
And Terry, just one other question is, I heard you say earlier that if a student or teacher tests positive, they would come back for a second test just for reassurance to make
No,
sure.
they actually don't have to have a second test. We have the ability, thanks to CHOP and the Department of Health, we have this piece of equipment where we can run a confirmation test.
Okay.
And it would be done within a matter of hours and not days. So they do not have to come back. You can see some false negatives though, and they're really not so much false, is that a person doesn't have enough viral load yet. And that's one of the reasons you want to do that testing weekly. So we don't want people to think because they've had a negative test, they're completely in the clear. But with a positive test, it's almost certainly positive, and we can confirm that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you. Ms. Ackman?
And thanks for, it's great that we're part of this pilot, and I can see how much work it is to get the operations set up. So thank you to everyone who's working on this. I don't know if you've gotten to this level of detail, but I was just wondering, are you thinking about if a teacher has a positive or a false positive even, will there be like other staff on hand who could maybe cover for the teacher that day, just because it could be slightly disruptive to those classes, or I don't know. I just wanted to
Really haven't, but I mean, if somebody tests positive,
Mm-hmm.
the advantage is we have a far better chance of doing contact tracing right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You would want that person isolated, and while they're waiting for the Q test results, out of the building,
Right.
and someplace else. If that may cause a disruption, I think everybody would agree far better to have that disruption than to have somebody who's testing positive remain in the building. But right now, I think our building administration has gotten about as good as they can as trying to fill in, not particularly well, because there are no substitutes, as best we can for a period of time. But my sense is, Terry, that we want them, anybody testing positive, even with the Q test, you want them, while they're waiting for the results, you want them isolated.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think we're already doing that. We're just going to be able to do it more quickly. And, we have a day or two jump on that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. I just kind of wanted to hear how you were thinking about it. And that's a great perspective on we're catching it faster and all,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Can I just add quickly that I think that with the coverage piece, once we are able to establish a schedule, we'll be able to mobilize some of our building subs in a way that will allow us to provide some additional coverage where we know we'll be testing on a given day, so that when again it kind of takes, we have to the horse before the cart and get that schedule established, and then I think we'll be able to problem solve some of the coverage issues as they come up.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just follow up quickly because I think that's an interesting and important point, that the testing is once a week, but it's not as if the entire district would be testing on, say, every Monday. It would, I'm just taking a wild guess here, that it might be like 2 schools each day, so that there's continuous testing, and that gives a little bit more flexibility in terms with the substitutes.
Yeah, and again, if our supply chain were strong enough, and our routine was down pat, we'd probably want to even do more than once a week if we could. The one group that I'm right now initially concerned about, we do not have the kinds of testing available for our student athletes. And I may be coming back to the board with a plan for us, if we can, finding an alternate supply train where we might purchase tests for those students or any student who couldn't afford the test. But we're not there yet.
Okay, thank you. Any last questions from the board? Mr. Lee.
Thank you. I was just following up. I'm curious, what's the limiting factor for the number of schools we can test in a given day? I'm just thinking that, the coming back from the weekend is probably the most dangerous time. So the earlier we could test staff in a given week, the better it would be. Right.
We're not there yet. We that's one of the reasons why we want to take next week to sort of get our routine set. And then, ideally, if we could get all 1,500 employees and those impacted students done, I just, want to, again, manage expectations in that we're, one of the reasons that we're doing this is because there's an expectation that others will learn by our setup and our process, knowing that we may not get it right the first time. Actually,
Okay.
I'm pretty well sure Terry will get it right.
So thank you, Mr. Copeland and Ms. Schaefer and Ms. Quinlan, for your providing this information, the overview of the testing. Next on our agenda are the committee meeting reports. And then after that will be the opportunity for audience recognition. But first, I would like to ask Ms. Kalish to report on the November 18th Communications Committee meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. So we had 3 main topics that we tackled at our meeting. First was our COVID-related communications, and our communications liaison, Ms. Buckman, gave a presentation outlining the current state of the district's COVID-related communications. She gave us a detailed timeline for the procedure of what happens in the district once we learn about a positive case. She gave us another overview of the COVID dashboard, which you can see on the district website, and explained that cases are reported at the building or departmental level and whether it's a student or a staff, and presented us a chart with weekly caseloads for to date this year. She also reports that we've set up, or are in the process of setting up, a COVID reporting hotline, which we needed because of the county's Department of Health inability to confirm positive cases for us as a district and conduct the necessary contact tracing that we needed in a timely manner. So families and staff will be able to report cases and ask their questions, and then the nursing staff will be able to triage calls and respond. And the next topic that was addressed was the equity infographic. and the progress is ongoing on that project, but it is making good progress. Currently, the information from the middle schools is being integrated with information from human resources, curriculum, and the elementary and high school levels. It's being updated for language consistency with other district materials and just smaller level copy editing. And it's currently currently the individual school websites on equity are being integrated into the infographic, and they'll be linked on there. The last topic we discussed was a potential partnership with the legislative committee, where the two committees would hope to work together on engaging the community to be in conversation with governmental decision makers or representatives on shared educational policy priorities. Our next meeting will be held on January 20th at 7 p.m. via Zoom.
Thank you, Ms. Kalish. Next, Ms. Finger will read the report on the December 2nd Curriculum Committee meeting.
Thank you. We had 3 topics as well that we spoke about. The first was the course proposal, and the course was proposed by Ms. Rosner, Mr. Alexander, and Dr. Pratt, and the course is called Black Excellence, the Politics, Economics, and Culture of an American People. It's a semester-long course that will be for the 21-22 school year. The course was actually a conversation that started several years ago, and in the fall of 2015, it was reinitiated by Mr. Copeland this past spring with conceptualization, planning, and feedback given over this past summer of 2020. It'll be a contemporary American history course whose focus is on Black excellence through a Black studies orientation, displaying a positive counter narrative, and will be open to 10th through 12th graders who already have a background in Global Studies 1. The course uses both PA core and teaching tolerance standards and will have 5 sections: Black excellence in politics, Black excellence in business, Black excellence in education, culture, and legacies. The next topic we discussed was extended day kindergarten, and Dr. Gaudioso presented that. To give a little background, extended day kindergarten began in 2013-14 school year, originally for a small group, 6 to 8 students who have significant literacy needs, and typically runs from February through June. In 2019, we started extended day kindergarten in December, and that also went until June. Annual screenings are used to identify 6 to 8 students to prepare them for success in first grade. Extended day kindergarten will service all students who are identified, so will take up to, but will not exceed 12 students. We had 9 sections in 2019. There is 1 section each at Bellman Hills, Kenwood, and Penn Valley, and 2 sections each at Gladwin, Marion, and Penn Wyn. It includes math, speech, language arts, and reading. And our focus is how do we intensify the rate of progress? There are some students who are not maintaining the gains of proficiency, so we do need to continue to look at supports we can provide. And the recommendation is further study and consideration of ongoing supports, opportunities, and measure of growth within and beyond the EDK program. For the 2021 school year, we're on track with identifying students, and we'll start mid-February and are preparing for both in-person and online. We do have some constraints in that staffing space. The number of students may be contingent on spacing and staffing, and possible cross-district eligibility criteria for students with greatest needs. And the final thing we discussed was a book proposal, and that was by Dr. Rachel Nichols, Mr. Kevin DeSantis, and Dr. Leslie Pratt. And the book is Stamped by Jason Reynolds, which is the young adult version of the adult text, stamped from the beginning. It's not a history book, but it is an overview narrative based on a nonfiction text. It is not a one-year book read. It will be used as a counter narrative layer to our social studies textbook. This began in December of 2019, and it was going to be used at the Gifted Seminar at BC Middle School. The books arrived the day before we went out in March, and teachers were very excited. There was an ISC mini grant. And then May, we had George Floyd murder, and the impetus was to then purchase the books from a Black-owned bookstore, was an action step towards supporting and uplifting Black businesses. We had an ISC mini grant. This book was piloted by social studies teachers, and in November of 2020, the Bala Cynwyd and Welsh Valley social studies teachers began the conversation for systematic integration of the book stamped into 8th grade history. So the next steps will be identifying spaces in the curriculum where stamped creates a counter or complicating narratives. We'll be developing 4 guaranteed lessons and identifying additional options to connect the book with history. All teachers will be getting this book. Our next meeting will be January 5th at 8:30 a.m. via Zoom. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Finger. Next, Ms. Ackman will provide the committee meeting report from the December 4th Policy Committee meeting.
Hi, the committee met on Friday, December 4th. We began with a presentation from Megan Schaefer from the administration about how to incorporate an anti-racism lens into our policy discussions and decision-making process. The purpose is to acknowledge that policy can be both a change agent and/or a barrier for this agenda item. The board members asked for a decision-making tool or reminder as part of our monthly and review and discussions in the policy committee. And a board member asked that we continue to use the term anti-racism for this work because equity could dilute or broaden the purpose of this work too much. We also adopted all second readings and repealed policy 714 as it was incorporated. We discussed first readings, including changes to our laptop policy, which reflect current broader use of laptops throughout the district besides high school and will serve as a better umbrella policy given our current practices. There is also now a responsibility tree included in terms of how laptops are managed. We also discussed policies related to school board operations and made sure they are current. This included adding a formal board assistant secretary in case needed for signature and other issues when the secretary is out. We then discussed administrative regulations, including the update to the grading policy, which was discussed at a prior board meeting. Changes were made to relate this policy better to the strategic plan, including cumulative grading, as we discussed in the curriculum committee meeting, and the AR now reflects this. We did not have time for discussion of policy or ARs 005, 006, 008, so we'll save that for next time. And our next meeting is January 8th at 8:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ackman. Next, if Mr. Mooring could please give the report for the December 9th Ad Hoc Committee meeting for equity and anti-racism.
Great, thank you. On December 9th, we held our Ad Hoc Committee meeting on equity and anti-racism via Zoom. The meeting was attended by Ad Hoc Committee members Lucy Klein, Shana Kalish, Peter Lee, and Board Member Deborah Finger, as well as Superintendent Copeland and Dr. Tara Dowdy, who is our equity consultant with the district. I opened the meeting with a brief welcome and overview of the agenda. Mr. Copeland then provided an update on the district's efforts to identify an internal assessment tool that will be used for our internal equity audit. I then shared a brief update on just our progress around the review of the equity statement that's under development and had been reviewed by stakeholders participating in the ad hoc committee meeting, and was also scheduled to be reviewed by a select number of students from Harriton High School and Lower Merion High School to provide feedback that would also be incorporated with the feedback we received from the parents and stakeholders participating in the ad hoc committee meetings. Superintendent Copeland then revisited the discussion that was initiated at the end of our our November call Zoom meeting regarding how parents and stakeholders could align with the efforts of the ad hoc committee by pursuing opportunities to become more civically engaged through participation in key organizations, both within the district and community, including but not limited to our civic associations, NAACP Education Committee, and other of our various task force and opportunities, including the HSA. We then moved into breakout groups to discuss how these options, how parents could become greater involved in some of these meetings and organizations and support the work of the ad hoc committee meeting. As we then reassembled, Ms. Schaefer came back and made a brief presentation reviewing some of the key questions that were introduced to our equity lens that will be applied to within the policy committee. And then we broke out again to discuss the impressions and get feedback from community members on the questions included in that equity lens. And our next ad hoc committee meeting will be held via Zoom January 13th, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mooring. Next, Mr. Lee will do the meeting report for the December 17th Facilities Purchasing Committee meeting.
Thank you. The following agenda items were discussed and recommended for approval by the committee for discussion and vote at tonight's meeting. First, we recommended for approval the list of district bills. We recommended for approval the following items from the purchasing report. $57,000 for Clipper Pipe and Service for the installation of piping to reconnect 5 air conditioning units at Penguin Elementary. $17,050.25 for weatherproofing technologies for roof repairs at Penguin Elementary. $9,878.80 for school installers of PA to install cubbies in the new temporary classrooms at Marion Elementary. The trade-in and purchase of 10 new 72-passenger CNG buses from MA Brightbill Body Works at a net cost of $1,693,250. The trade-in and purchase of 8 new 30-passenger gasoline buses from Roar Bus Sales at a net cost of $529,872. We recommended for approval the list of approved school bus drivers. We recommended for approval the following contracts: a 3-year renewal with Presidio Network Solutions for computer network security services for a 3-year total cost of $208,950. 2 contracts with I2 Security Solutions to install key fobs to secure network equipment across the district. Total cost is $50,965. An amendment to the agreement with Advanced Protection Company to extend the period of interim crossing guards being provided during COVID to include January 11th, 2021 through June 17th, 2021 for a not to exceed amount of $55,000. An amendment to the agreement with First Student Inc. to enable approved and trained first student school bus drivers to drive Lmsb buses and routes on an interim basis should the need arise at a cost of $40 per hour. We reviewed and recommended for approval 2 work orders related to the proposed classroom additions at Harriton High School. F. Tavani and Associates to conduct a traffic study for a not to exceed amount of $25,000. David Blackmore and Associates for stormwater management testing for a not to exceed amount of $15,000. 1 work order related to the construction of the new middle school. Traffic Planning and Design Inc. for traffic signal and roadway design planning, excuse me, for a not to exceed amount of $44,720. We recommended for approval 2 change orders related to the construction of the new middle school. An increase of $60,302.82 for IMC construction related to earth removal. An increase of $67,915 for Watt services related to blasting. We ended the meeting with 2 project updates, one on the new middle school. The blasting and rock crushing is complete at the site and work continues on the installation of the foundation of the new middle school. Second update was on air quality. Reynolds has received the bipolar ionization equipment and installation has begun. The next Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting will be on Thursday, January 21st. at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And our final committee report, Ms. Robinson will report on the December 18th Finance Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. The Finance Committee met on December 18th at 8:30 a.m. via Zoom. The purpose of the meeting was to accept the results of the audit of the financial statements and the single audit of the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. Tom Ronayne of Rayner and Company walked us through the audited financial statements and footnotes. LMSD received a clean opinion, or in other words, an unqualified one, which means that the financial statements presented fairly in all material respects the financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Lower Merion School District as of June 30th, 2020. Tom then took us through specific pages of the financial statements and footnotes, including the fund balance, which ended at $43 million. Historically, this balance has been $56 million at June 30th, 2018, and $43 million at June 30th, 2019. We looked at debt of the district at June 30th, 2020, which ended at $227 million. And LMSD's debt balance has been $234 million in 2018 and $217 million in 2019. LMSD took out additional debt to finance the new middle school project during this fiscal year. And finally, we looked at the financial position of the district, which ended at negative $109 million. The net financial position of the negative $109 million means that the liabilities exceed assets by $109 million. This is the case due to the booking of a $418 million pension liability. This type of liability has been on the books for a few years now. Before booking the liability, LMSD had a net positive position. This accounting change has affected all school districts and other governmental entities since 2015. The budgetary comparison schedule indicates a positive variance with the final budget. We then took a brief overview of the single audit report. Rayner and Company had to, as part of their audit function, audit a major federal program, in LMSD's case, the Nutritional School Lunch Program. The auditors found that LMSD was in compliance with the federal programs in all material respects, another clean opinion. That concluded the meeting, and we will have additional Finance Committee meetings beginning in January or February to go over the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson, and thank you to all of the board members who presented committee meeting reports tonight. I just wanted to take a moment and encourage those of you in the audience tonight. If you want to learn more about the district and get more involved and have more conversations about what's going on in the district, really, truly, the committee meetings are a great opportunity to get more involved and to be part of that conversation, because a lot of great ideas and conversation do happen during those committee meetings. And so I encourage you all to participate. And if you want access to that, that information is on the website, just like the information for tonight's meeting on the regular board business meetings. Other ways to get involved, I just wanted to follow up on the email from Mr. Copeland today that went to parents and guardians about the district looking for volunteers for various committees that will be starting up in the new year around equity and inclusion, the 5 to 8 committee, a K through 4 committee, and the middle school naming committee. A lot of information about that is on either in the correspondence that went out today, but also on the Lower Merion School District website. And I encourage you, if you are interested, to share your information with Ms. Novak on that. So next is time for audience recognition. At this time, we will allow 10 minutes for public comment on any topic. Ms. LaPera will open the chat feature and you'll see a timer appear on the screen. We ask that you please start your comment with your name and where you reside within the district. It does not need to be as specific as a street, but an area such as Narberth or Wynwood is sufficient. But it's important that your comment has your name and where you reside so that it can be shared. And also that we ask the public comment be limited to one comment per person. Ms. LaPera? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Roos, can you please share tonight's comments?
Yes, be happy to. Ruth Schenken, Wynwood asks, what is the protocol for possibly non-tested athletes going to and returning from events on the school buses? Next comment, Jen Kelly, Penn Valley. Thank you so much to everyone who has made LMSD's participation in this rapid testing program possible. It's an exciting development for our school community. As you further refine the parameters, I hope that you will include plans for communicating the results in a way that distinguishes the assurance testing from the rest of the COVID-19 dashboard reporting. Last comment is from Christina Chang, Penn Valley. Has the board and Mr. Copeland read the Brown School of Public Health's latest report? There are some excellent ideas that should be considered for LMSD. That's it.
I can, so the, I have not read the Brown School. We've been, as I mentioned, working with Children's Hospital, but we are, we're constantly taking incoming on a variety of different fronts, including seeing what other countries are doing in terms of face-to-face in-school teaching. In terms of the athletic protocols, we do not have, right now, we do not have a plan for competition. Sorry, I had my camera off and didn't realize it. Thank you, Ms. LaPera, for yelling at me. We do not have a competition plan yet. When we had our fall sports, we did have specific protocols in working with districts outside of, well, we didn't work actually outside the league, but we did have specifics. And when we do put a plan in place, if we put a plan in place for competition, who we compete with and what we would insist on our competitors doing would be part of that plan.
Thank you. I would just like to follow up quickly and say that that Brown Public Health report was shared with the board so that I know that I have read it, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the other board members, but please know that that was shared with us. So before we move on to approve tonight's agenda, does the board have any questions on any of the actions? Okay, I do not see any raised hands at the moment. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda via consent?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Mr. Roos will now report on the Sunshine Act.
Yes, the board met in executive session earlier this evening regarding threat and litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Roos. Ms. LaPera, can you please share our upcoming meeting dates?
Yeah, sorry about that. We have January 11th. Just close this one. January 11th, Education Committee meeting and the supplementary regular board meeting. January 25th is a regular business board meeting, and both of those are at 8 p.m. via Zoom. Our committee meetings are January 6th, curriculum, January 8th, policy, January 13th, ad hoc committee for equity and anti-racism, which is at 7 p.m. January 20th is the Communications Committee meeting, also at 7 p.m. And January 21st is the Facility and Purchasing Committee meeting, which all of the other committee meetings are at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you.
And I
Before
think
we,
Mr. Roos has a question.
Yeah, excuse me, I wasn't at the December 7th meeting. I know there was an executive session December 7th regarding personnel and litigation. I'm not sure if it was announced then, but if it wasn't, I'm announcing it now.
Thank you.
thank you. So before we adjourn, I would like to take a moment and share a few words of gratitude. On behalf of myself and the board, I want to say that we could not be more thankful and proud of the staff and administration and students. Our teachers and staff continue to go above and beyond, providing the best educational experience for our students during these truly uncertain circumstances. And our students have stepped up to take on the responsibility of following our health and safety protocols, which do result in a very different in-school experience than they are used to. And finally, a thank you to the parents, guardians, and community for your continuing support and patience and understanding. As with everything during this pandemic, it's an ongoing process to find the right balance with each decision. So as this meeting adjourns, I'd like to wish everyone a safe, healthy, and happy winter break and a happy new year. The meeting is adjourned.